Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. Today I thought I'd share with you the story of one of my firearm transfers and how it went a little bit off the rails. And the reason why I'm sharing this is just to sort of give an insight into the experiences that some Canadian gun owners have and what we end up dealing with when we're dealing with the bureaucracy. So I'm just going to bring this up. This is from my file at the Canadian Firearms Program. You can see in the upper right, Runkle Ian. That's me. So it says application type transfer and application status application withdrawn. We're going to come back to that. Now, it's been a while since I dealt with this, so my memory is not 100%. Right at the start here, you see it says, if firearm purpose, shoot club must have valid authorization to transport. Warning, purpose is target shooting / practice and no authorization to transport already exists. Passed, no. So this is a set of sort of pre-eligibility tests that go through. And if I recall correctly, although I'm not 100% on the timing, this was probably during the sort of time when I was in a battle with the chief firearms officer over whether or not I had to be a range member. That's a battle I ultimately won, but that's a story for another video. So moving on, I'm just going to scroll to the bottom because this is in reverse chronological order and sort of explain what was going on here. So June 10th, 2014, they note firearm is stored at Edmonton Police Services. Now this firearm did not belong to a client of mine. This is not that sort of situation, although I have been paid in firearms before. However, this was a situation where someone was going to lose their guns. Again, not a client of mine. And I was going to have this firearm transferred to me to save it from, the chop saw and then ultimately the smelter. So I had all my ducks in a row, which means I had a court order to say that this firearm was to be transferred to me. So they noted as an individual to individual transfer. So not from a store, but an exchange between two people. Buyer ID'd and firearms information confirmed, because I called them up and did all that. Firearm is stored at Edmonton Police Services. Buyer to pick up, seller to be ID'd. All of that makes sense. At the, June 17th, we have buyer called for status because, of course, at this point, it's been a week. I'm following up and requested that we get in contact with seller because they indicated that they didn't have that at the time. Notice sent to dispatch to ID seller. June 17th, buyer called on status, and then something they redacted. You can see that I made a bunch of redactions which are in black. Where the Canadian Firearms Program redacted this before they sent me the documents, those are just in blanks. They're white. So buyer called on status, redacted. And I can't remember what was going on that day, but they had some note. June 18th, looks like they redacted out some names. They don't typically want to reveal names. Confirmed with blank. The transfer is to be forwarded to CFO for review. See license comments dated, and then from 2012, CFO review. I suspect, again, that this was because I did not pass that initial test of do you have a range membership on file. But again, this was an issue that I think at this point I'd already sort of resolved with the CFO, but I'm not 100% on that. That's just my essential guessing from this. I'd have to go through and look at dates in order to be 100% on that. So June 19th, they say, as per previous comments, application errors not a concern. So they said that's not a problem. Firearm is under protective custody, reviewed eligibility tab, valid long-term authorization shown on buyer's license, recommend approval. So good to go so far. They're saying this should be good. CFR review. And then it comes up, FRAS review of seller's events required. I'm not sure exactly what that means. But June 24th, buyer called on status, CFR review. July 2nd, buyer called for status, CFR review. And then here's a key part. Buyer says that the firearm will be destroyed by the Edmonton Police Service if not approved by a specific date. Sent notification to have reviewed. The reason why is because these court orders that specify that these firearms are to be released from a police department almost inevitably come with a date that says, if not picked up by this particular date, then it's to be forfeited to the police. And once it's forfeited to the police, they chop it up, they melt it down, the gun is destroyed. And that's something I really wanted to avoid because I kind of wanted this gun. So I'm calling them saying, can you get a move on? Because I really don't want to lose this gun just because you guys can't do your jobs and process this application. And at this point, I figured that this application should be fairly straightforward. So July 3rd, sent email to firearms officer waiting for response. July 3rd, buyer called for status. Buyer requests transfer notice to be sent to his email, which I've redacted. Buyer called status. This is my actual personal email that this was in, so that's why I redacted it. If you're looking for my work email, that's on my about page here. So July 7th, I'm calling them again. They resend the email to CFO on July 8th. So again, nothing's happening. July 9th, heard from SM, who is the CFO of Alberta, who asked that this transfer be sent back for withdrawal, as the firearms will remain in the protected custody of Edmonton Police Service until the disposition of seller's charges, which shouldn't be the case because, again, I had a court order saying it's coming to me. July 10th, as per request from JM, transfer withdrawn. July 10th, I call for status. They transfer me to the CFO. And July 11th, they say buyer called on status. So you can see I'm not sitting on my thumbs here. I'm pestering them. Withdrawn, referred to CFO at buyer's request. Now a little bit about withdrawing something. Normally the only person who can withdraw an application for something is the person who made that application. You know, if I'm a government official and somebody sends me an application, I can't withdraw their application. Only they can withdraw their application. So this perplexed me quite a bit, I will say. I was, in fact, quite annoyed by this and a little upset because when they're telling me, oh, we withdrew your application, I go, how do you do that? You can't do that. That's not how any of this works. So yeah, they say withdrawn as per request from JM. JM is not IR. It's somebody working at the Canadian Firearms Program. This makes no sense, but it's what happened. So July 11th, buyer called requesting a letter stating he's being refused this transfer. Again, when they refuse a transfer, they're supposed to send you, a notice and reasons and all of that, which they didn't do. Client was advised he was not being refused a transfer, but it was on hold and would not be approved at this time. Buyer indicated he has bill of sale stating the firearm is his and a letter from the courts indicating the firearm was to be released to him. Advised buyer to fax in the legal documents and it would be looked at by a firearms officer. So that had already been done, but now they ask me to do it again. Fine, they lose the documents, stuff happens. July 11th, buyer forwarded a scanned copy of the bill of sale and Section 110 prohibition to the firearms chief firearms officer. Information forwarded, buyer updated. July 15th, called for status. And then July 15th, I have faxed the copies of the bill of sale and the court order to registries in Ottawa. As transfer was withdrawn, you have to start the process of a new transfer. So not only was it withdrawn, but this withdrawal was the complete end to this transfer application, which sounds a lot to me like a refusal. But they're saying you weren't refused, you were instead, we decided that we were going to withdraw your application using the powers that we don't have, because normally you can't withdraw somebody else's application. So this was a very frustrating, experience for me in terms of getting this dealt with, because I still don't understand what happened here. I still don't understand how they determined that this was something that they could do, but that's what they decided. Now you might be wondering what ultimately happened, and unfortunately the sad result is that the firearm was, no, I'm just kidding. I don't give up that easily. I have the gun. I quite like the gun. This is, of course, I don't know if you can see, but empty. I'm not going to play with anything loaded in a situation other than the range. But I did eventually manage to get the firearm transferred over. But this was way more hassle than it needed to be. And this application withdrawn thing is just one of those things that I can't explain in a way that that sort of fits with the law. You can't normally withdraw somebody else's application. Now, you might be wondering what the ultimate sort of takeaway from this story is. And I think it's this. At the end of the day, I was successful. You know, I got this gun. I like this gun. It's a SIG P226. It's a good firearm. But in large part, that's because I have a legal degree. I have some experience in this area. And I'm fairly tenacious. As I said, I don't give up easy. But a lot of other people who might be less experienced, less knowledgeable, or maybe just less tenacious might ultimately have been thwarted by this. They might have given up. They might have not been able to get this dealt with in time, and they might have lost their property if they were in the similar situation. So I don't, I would like to do whatever I can to challenge this kind of thing, because this, I don't really understand still how they can purport to withdraw my application. It makes no sense. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope this story has been, useful to you. I hope you've learned something from it. If you have, please like this. Please share it with your friends. Please subscribe to see more content. I also want to thank my Patreon supporters at the $50 level. Demo, People of Canada, Sir Daniel Wicks of Alberta, Canada's National Firearms Association, Toronto Airsoft, Rail, and at the $20 level, Cameron Johnson, Kevin Fleet, and Dale Nesbitt, as well as the $10 Patreons who will be in the crawl immediately following. Thank you once again. I hope this has armed you with knowledge.